All right, let's jump straight into this explainer and unlock the absolutely fascinating system that scientists use to organize, well, literally every single living thing on Earth. Imagine you're sitting at your study desk, you open up a textbook, and right there is a map. But it's not a map of the world, it's a map of life itself. That is exactly what we are going to explore today.
I mean, think about it for a second. It's a massive logistical nightmare, right? If someone handed you billions of completely different organisms, from the tiniest microscopic cell all the way up to the largest mammal, how would you even begin to sort them out? It sounds like total chaos. But biology actually has a brilliant, incredibly elegant solution to keep nature's sheer diversity from turning into a disorganized mess.
So here is our roadmap for today. We're going to hit number 1, sorting the tree of life, then move right into 2, the Linnaean hierarchy. After that, we'll look at 3, real-world classifications, figure out 4, defining a species, and finish up with 5, exceptions to the rule.
Okay, let's get started with part 1, sorting the tree of life, the basics of biological classification. To actually begin making sense of billions of living organisms, we first really need to understand the basic containers we're sorting them into. The crucial point to remember here is that these taxa basically act like giant biological filing cabinets. A taxon, or taxa if we're using the plural, is simply a very specific group into which an organism is classified. It gives scientists everywhere a universally understood way to categorize life.
Moving right along to section 2, the Linnaean hierarchy, a history of organizing life.
You know, this elegant filing system wasn't just cooked up overnight. The whole foundation was actually built by a Swedish botanist named Carl Linnaeus, who devised the original 7-rank system way back in 1735. And for centuries, scientists worked perfectly within his framework. But biology is always advancing. It wasn't until way later, in 1977, that we realized we actually needed a brand new, higher, overarching category. So we added the rank of domain right to the very top.
This structure operates brilliantly as a zoom-in funnel. It starts incredibly broad at the top and then filters down to be incredibly specific at the bottom. Think of it exactly like a cosmic mailing address. The top level is your country. Then it narrows down to your state, your city, your street, all the way down to your precise house. Let's break down each level step by step.
Starting right at the very top of that funnel, we have the highest taxonomic rank, the domain. All living organisms are divided into 3 massive domains: bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. Step 2 narrows it down to kingdom. For instance, the domain eukarya is further divided into 4 kingdoms you probably recognize: Animalia, Plantae, Fungi, and Protista. Step 3 narrows it even further into a phylum. But, quick side note here, there is an exception. If we are talking about plants and fungi, we actually use the word division instead of phylum.
As we continue sliding down the funnel, things get more and more specific. Each phylum or division is subdivided into related classes. Then, each class is further divided into related orders, which then break down into related families. At each and every step, these groups are getting smaller, and the organisms inside them share more and more specific traits.
Finally, at the absolute bottom of our inverted pyramid, we reach the most precise classifications of all. Families break down into related genera, that's the plural for genus, by the way, and a genus filters down to the absolute most specific level of classification there is, the species.
All right, let's make this concrete. Section 3, real-world classifications, applying the taxonomic ranks.
To really make this click in your mind, let's apply this abstract hierarchy to a few living things we all easily recognize. And what is just so fascinating here is how clearly we can see our biological relationships mapped out. Take a look at the human and the fruit fly columns. We actually share the exact same kingdom, Animalia. We're both animals. But we diverge literally immediately after that at the phylum level. The fly goes to Arthropoda, while we jump over to Chordata. From there, our paths never cross again, eventually ending in completely different species: D. melanaster for the fly and H. sapiens for us. Meanwhile, look at the pea. It starts in a completely different kingdom altogether, Plantae. And remember our rule from earlier, it uses division instead of phylum, classifying it under Magnoliophyta.
Which brings us nicely to section 4, defining a species, the basic unit of classification.
Since species is essentially the foundational building block of this entire system, we have to define it incredibly strictly. This definition right here is the ultimate test for biologists. An organism is never just placed into a species based on its looks alone.
A true species is a group of organisms that can interbreed freely among themselves, and this is the absolutely crucial part. They must be able to produce fertile offspring.
But wait, there's a little more to it. Furthermore, each species must be reproductively isolated from other groups out there in nature. They also have to have their own entirely distinct structural, ecological, and behavioral characteristics. It's a very rigid, specific set of criteria designed to keep our classification system perfectly organized.
But as always, with science, there's a catch. Section 5. Exceptions to the rule. When nature gets wonderfully messy.
We've spent this entire explainer establishing these super strict rules of taxonomy, right? Well, here is the plot twist. Biology is wonderfully, wildly messy, and nature just doesn't always play by our human-made rules. Take a look at the mule. This animal is the exact reason why the phrase "in nature" is so incredibly critical to our definition of a species.
You see, in the definition of a species, we heavily emphasize in nature, because under artificial, unnatural conditions, two entirely different but closely related species actually can crossbreed. A cross between a male donkey and a female horse produces a mule. But remember our golden rule about producing fertile offspring? The mule is completely infertile. Because this artificial cross produces an infertile offspring, the donkey and the horse firmly remain completely separate species.
So we essentially end up with two massive exceptions that completely wreck our neat little taxonomic boxes. On one side, we have artificial crossbreeding, which happens under unnatural conditions and results in infertile offspring, just like our mule. On the flip side, we have a completely different problem: organisms that reproduce asexually. For tons of unicellular organisms, they simply don't interbreed with one another at all. So the entire foundational criteria of interbreeding freely literally cannot even be used for species recognition in those organisms.
And honestly, that brilliantly illustrates the true beauty of science. We create these highly structured, incredibly useful systems to understand the architecture of life, yet nature always finds a way to surprise us. Remember, Carl Linnaeus created his system back in 1735, and we had to add an entirely new top level, the domain, in 1977. It really leaves you wondering, as we continue to study the microscopic world and discover even more of nature's wonderfully messy exceptions, how much will our human-made filing system have to evolve in the future? Keep that in the back of your mind next time you're sitting at your desk taking notes. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the rules.